Okay. So, hello everyone. Welcome to another session in GAMPRG3. And today, oh, we'll talk about writing a robust class. So, before we proceed, is there any questions or any concerns with anything sa GAMPRG3 related? Wala. Sige. Kung wala, then we'll just proceed. So, writing a robust class. Let's first think of tower defense game. So, kung naalala yung GAMPRG 2 nyo, that was a tower defense where you had to create different um, a different system nung sa GAMPROG 1, and then you had to have your like using the game mode, parang game manager, etc. etc. And then you have towers, and then you have components for buffs or debuffs. So yun. So una, localizing data and behavior. So question, where do we store the HP variable? The HP data must be stored in a variable, but where? So it might sound too easy, but usually we mess this up. Um, Usually kasi yung iba kung saan sila nilalagay yung HP, either sa class or they create a component, or even worse doon sa, well, not worse, but uh, sa managers, right? So, option one, doon ba sa manager, yung create a game manager which manages all overall game rules. Tapos doon mo ilalagay yung health ng core or yung base nyo. Or option two, sa core mismo, you create a health component and you add it directly sa core. So, anyone? Is there anyone here who would choose option one? To option one. Okay. Okay. Ang iba sa core. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. So, there's no right or wrong answer here, actually. There's no right or wrong answer here. Since sa option one, kapag ginalagay mo yung health doon, the game manager is prone to be bloated. And later, it'll be harder to manage. Kasi si game manager, isipin nyo lahat ng mga functions sa game like pausing or pagpanalo or pagtalo, mga ganun. Ano dapat siya sa game manager? So, isipin nyo, dinagdagan pa ng ng another task such as holding the health of the core. And kapag option 2, here we localize the data to where it should belong. So, ang health ng core will be on the core. So, if you need access, then dapat may bigyan mo siya ng reference somewhere, somehow. And you can also choose to implement this as a health component. And then again, there's no right or wrong here. Si Coronel, yeah, that is a good idea rin. Kapag multiple cores, sure, pwede siguro game manager. Or kapag solo, yung option 2. And there are other options na rin. You can store the health somewhere na sa player mismo. Right? May mga ganun. Pero, given these two options, again, there's no right or wrong. So, when writing a boss class, example natin si tower-based class, you see tower-based class, if you recall, there are different kinds of towers, right? So, not only do they just shoot missiles or bullets, ang may ibang towers na nag-heal, nag-heal tuloy, nagsuslow or nag power up ng ibang towers, right? So, ang idea ng paggawa ng verbose class is to have the tower base class to have the most features. So, kapag may mga new types that will be introduced later, ayan, we can add it to the child classes. And in here, sa tower base class, we can share some behavior. So, focus on the core classes. So, core classes require abstraction. What does that mean? Yung nga, yung abstraction, it can be anything. So, in the core class, you can create a function na virtual that can be empty. Okay lang na empty lang siya. Kasi later on, pwede mo siya bigyan ng function. And it depends on what type of tower you have, di ba? Like, instead, let's say you create a fire na function. Yung fire na yun, you could relate it to not just firing a bullet, maybe firing a laser, or maybe firing ano pa ba? Yeah, bullet or laser or missile, right? So, the core classes, kailangan talaga nila ng abstraction. So, core classes are the ones we wire to other classes. Code architecture increases as abstraction increases. So, the more virtual functions that you have, that's when you start knowing when to have things to be public or maybe protected or private. We don't want naman everything to be shown sa child classes. So, you'll have them private. There are some other functions na ayaw mo ipakita sa lahat ng ibang classes. So, we don't want them to be public. Such as, like, why would you want to have a public na aim or fire, right? You only want them to be within the child classes and the base class. So, may mga ganun. So, a core class, it supports as many features as possible. And finally, be robust but do not overextend. Ang meaning nito is, huwag kayo masyado lagyan ng lahat ng features. Lahat ng features andun sa base class. So there's also a limit to it. So sure, we can have the base class a fire kasi siguro sometimes all towers could have fire. Pero other things such as pang slow or pang burn, problem is we can't really have them in the base class because not all towers would benefit from having those functions. So do not overextend it. Questions or clarifications? Okay. So, planning the base class. Una, list all data and behavior for known derived types. Kailangan nyo muna isipin kung ano yung mga functions ng mga child classes. You list them down so that you know what functions that we can keep on the base class and what functions na kailangan gawin virtual or kailangan gawin public, etc. You should list all those data and behavior down. Common data and behavior should be pushed to the base class. So yun nga. Kaya kailangan mo muna malaman ano yung data and behavior. Next, some data and behavior are common enough for most derived types but are not applicable to a select few. So yun nga, like what I was talking about with like burning or freezing or slowing or yung pagdagdag ng gold. So very select few lang ang mga gamit nun. Like such as not all towers have a projectile and following inheritance rule rigidly results to copy pasting. So if inaano yung inheritance rule, having it all in the base class muna. Then ipapa-inherit nyo sa mga child classes. And finally, uh, yung sa dry or don't repeat yourself states that no code should be repeated. Now, how do we add the projectile? So there's another questions for you guys. Una, create a component. Introduce shooting of projectiles as a component. Break down the data and behavior of towers into components. Each component does a single task. So, component system to. Or, option 2, push to base class. So, add projectile to the base tower class. Push the data and behavior to the base class. Ayan. So, sino na if you were to do projectiles or pag-add ng projectiles, may option 1 ba dito? Where we break down the behavior to components and just add them to the base class or to the towers that needs it? Or may mga option 2? Ano? Anyone? Who, what would you guys have chosen? Option 1 or option 2? May mga option 1 ba? Mm-hmm. How about the others? How would you do a projectile? Sige. So, 1. Okay. In this case, again, there's no right or wrong here. When we choose to have components, we have an idea of the interface segregation principle. Kasi yung interface segregation principle, we know derived type should be forced to use a method or data that it doesn't use. Like kanina, sure, lahat ng functions for the children should not always be in the base class. So we shouldn't really force it para lang magamit siya sa child classes. Refrain from adding data and behavior that only works for a select few. In games, we can segregate data and functionality into components. Components can be cherry-picked. So yung kagandahan nito is uh, we're not forced to put everything in the base class. So yes, you can list down all the data and behavior, but that doesn't mean that you're forced to add them all. You can choose to have a component-based system where you can just choose kung ano yung kailangan ng tower, such as should the tower be able to aim, should the tower deal AoE, should the tower just instead of shoot will get na lang lahat ng mga actors around it. So mga ganun. So components can be further abstracted through inheritance or interface. Do this if the need arises. Ayan. So kung option 1, add a component more flexible but requires more work. Component-based architecture is not dependent on inheritance. So in this case, rarely would you use mga child classes because ang component na ang may hawak nun ng mga events. Na kapag option 2, easier but may bloat the base class. So this is fine as long as we're not bloating it too much. So may limit naman. There's a limit to having to use all the functions in the base class. So set the general rules at first, then bend them when the need arises. Be quick enough to adapt to requirements. So in order to be quick, it's usually something na through experience lang yun. It's understandable na if you're not able to find out right away na, oh, dapat pala ginawa ko to, ginawa ganyan. That is normal. That is something that you have to go through and then you'll find out na there's a better way pala into doing yung ginawa niyo noon. And I believe naman may mga that has happened to at least some of you when you have created a game before. Or yung mga nagka-capsule ngayon. mga kapsong tuna, right? Now, let's talk about SRP again, or single responsibility principle. A class should have a single responsibility. Responsibility is defined as reason to change. So as we add more features to the class may get more responsibility. And eventually, the class will be bloated with data and features, and beginners only notice the bloating problem when the damage has already been done. So, ayun nga. That is why you don't have to fully commit to all the principles here. Each of them have a guide to do something, pero they are not, again, a solution. So yes, SRP does work in most cases, but for things such as towers with multiple types, yung mga ganun, may there's a limit to it, right? Kasi if you add more features into the base class, prone talaga siya sa bloating. So in this case, it's a case to case basis. You should know when to do this and when not to follow this at all. And as I said, experience dictates how much is enough. So yeah, don't overdo SRP. Siya yung most misinterpreted principle sa lahat ng principles in solid. So yung mga cultists na SRP cultists, they would create a new class for simple tasks like adding integers. Kasi isipin nyo, yung class niyo yun, its responsibility is to just add integers. And medyo uh, too much na yun of single responsibility principle. That is very, very, tawag dito? Not precise, but it's too much of having a single responsibility. So the SRP's main goal is to minimize changes in code when updates do happen, and it should not split your classes into subatomic level. So do not start a cult out of solid. It exists to make our lives easier. They are, yeah, ayun nga. Wag niyo masyado idibdib yung SRP. Yung, not SRP, but yung solid principles mismo. Because yes, they all work in a way, but they should not be fully followed. In this one, it depends on how, uh, through both experience and how your system works. So SRP is proposing a balance between aggregation and division. Apparently that's it. So in this lecture, more of like really depends on paano yung system niyo. Just like everything in the solid principle, it really depends on how your system is and how mostly from your experience din. And again, medyo mahirap rin magbigay ng mga examples through this because it's a case to case basis. Okay. Honest kayo. If you guys want, we can try to think of a game and then isipin natin paano natin gagawin. Anyone? Can anyone suggest a game? Tapos isipin natin. What should the system be? Mobile Legends. Ayan, sige. Mobile Legends. Kapag Mobile Legends, ang game manager natin will be win-lose. Paano siya mag-win, paano siya mag-lose, ano mangyayari. In this case, we're not talking about yung menu part or pag-select ng champions, but we're talking about sa game mismo. So game manager In this case, where would the health of the core be? Should the health of the core be in the game manager or on by itself on the cores mismo? By itself? Ang iba. Should the health of the cores be on the game manager? Sige. Mukhang everyone agrees naman with no, by itself. So, following SRP, yes, better to have the health of the cores on the core itself. Paano natin bibigyan ng reference nun? Using events and like in Unreal Engine event dispatcher or in Unity si Unity action or si yung mga ano isa? Delegates? I think it's Unity action or Unity events. Ayun. So mga ganun, game manager should be able to have a reference to the cores. Then malaman na nila kung patay na yung core through events. So that's one. Second, unit. So unit, paano natin yung gagawin yung mga skills? So isipin nyo, each skill has so many different mga nangyayari. It could heal, it could damage, it could move people, it could choose not to, whatever. So units, ano yung variables or ano dapat ang data ng mga units? So we have health, we have stats, right? Health, stats, you have armor, gold. You could have gold in that. You could have level, etc. Yung skills. Should the skills be components? Should the skills be instead its own class? Right? In this case, yun nga, yung buffs and debuffs, no? Paano yun? Will the buffs and debuffs be on the skill itself or should they have their own components? So that's one thing to think of. Kasi, well, for me, it would be better kapag by components siya. Pero for others, it could work na doon sa skill mismo. And again, there's nothing wrong with that, but depends on the system that they have. Alright. What else pa? Yung items. Yung items with both passive or active. Should they be components? Should they be instead coded into the class itself? Right? Kasi everything is an item. But when you start thinking about the mga active skills within the item, that's when you think na paano yun? Should they be a component ng item? Or instead, something that will be called within the item, mga ganun. So that's something that you should think with when you start incorporating solid principles. Ano pa ba? Si unit. Oo nga, isipin nyo pa. Unit is the creeps? Are they a unit? Are they different from the unit ni player? If not the creeps, paano yung mga jungle enemies? Or si dragon or whatever. Ay, not dragon. May dragon pa? No, scuttle crab, turtle, si Lord. Mobile Legends Mobile Legends Lord. Right. So isipin nyo, should they be considered as a unit or not? Ang iba, they would create a different class for it since they are just a usual enemy, which is okay lang. There's some sense into it. They don't have to like take in some things that the in a hero would have, like skills, right? Kasi yung mga jungle, wala man ng skills, they just attack. So yun yung mga dapat kayong isipin when you first create, when you do create a game. So yeah, another game before we wrap this up. Anyone? Can anyone suggest another game? Oh, sige, balik tayo sa Pal World. So, Pal World, ang game mode nun, sure, they don't have a win or lose condition, but the game manager handles or could handle the pag-spawn ng mga minions ulit, pag-spawn ng mga pals or pag-spawn ng mga dungeons, uh, kailan mag-spawn yung mga alpha or yung mga boss, right? So in that case, well, you don't really need well, and that ayun, isa pa yun. Sige. Think about the dungeon timers. Should they be under a game manager or should they have their own class? So isipin nyo, after you kill a boss, may timer na mangyayari. May wait. Should there be a class that handles it or should game manager handle it? Anyone? How would you do it? Kung may class mas maganda. True. Yeah. I would think so as well. Yeah. So, in this case, oo, magandang idea is makaroon sila ng different class to handle when timer ends, right? Or a dungeon class itself where it stores kung ano yung enemy nandun and then may sarili siyang timer. Kasi in this case kasi di mo madedelete yung dungeon. And yung maganda nito is you can reuse that for different dungeons as well. So si game manager, ang kailangan lang nila is malaman yung references sa lahat ng dungeons na yun. And it will handle when it would appear or not. Alright? Next, yung mga pals. Di ba may mga skills yun? Paano kaya yun? Kung may skills ang mga pals, would it be better na magkaroon sila ng components? Or will they maybe just call a data asset na, oy, gagamitin itong skill. Tapos, yung data asset niyan may kung anong whatever actor it has to deal damage. Kayo. If may skill ang yung pal, would it be better na gawin na lang gawin na lang actor component yon. Or what if it just spawns an actor, right? So that's something na kailangan nyo talaga isipin. Because let's say you have it will spawn different actors. Paano yung mga different skills? Does that mean yung may skill ka na base class and then it will just yung mga child classes will be based on the different skills, right? It's something that you really have to think about because the moment you reach to the certain part, tapos naisip niya, ay, baka mas okay yung isa. Ang problem nun is you have to redo everything. And sure, you can do it. Ang tanong is, do you have the time for it? So, so one way to avoid this is siguro, not siguro, but use your knowledge sa solid. Either should it have single responsibility, like the skill, or should it be just components when you add it to the child classes? So that's something that you guys would have to think about. Ano pa ba? Um, what other systems are there in Pal World? Ito. Ah, siguro madali lang. 'Di ba kapag gagawa kayo ng mga kapag gagawa kayo ng mga stuff for your base, like the furnace or whatever, should it be should they be all different types of actors, or should they be same actor pero iniiba nyo yung child class, or should it be component based, right? So kailangan yung isipin. Uh, Cause for me, we can have them as they all come from one base class, which is like the interactable object. And then siguro we can also have a child class of that na like base objects lang. Kasi those are objects that yung parang pwede mag-work ang mga pals doon, right? So that's a child class of a child class. And then you create another child class for each of the different types. So that's one way. Another is they're all from just one class pero may pinapasok lang kayong mga components. And that's another way. So it's really something that you have to carefully think about. Job proficiencies. Ang job proficiencies, simply from stats lang yun eh. Kung isipin nyo, lahat ng pals, they all have a stat, and it's as simple as having data for each stat value. So everyone has like the stats, pero sa iba, zero lang yung sa handiwork, zero lang sa kindling, pero may may value sa iba, such as yung sa farming or planting, mga ganun. So that one, hindi naman kailangan ng matinding uh, paggawa ng components or something. More of like stats na yun. Okay? So any questions? Concerns? Clarifications? Wala? Sige. In that case, siguro reminder lang, please do consult me for your milestones, yung mga nagka-capstone, yung mga magpapakita ng capstone for this subject. Please do show your milestone so I can see naman kung kumusta naman. And yung mga hindi magka-capstone or mag-show ng capstone here, don't forget to show me your HCD before you start creating your milestones. What else? Pwede naman today. After class, yung mga gusto magpa-check ng milestones, go lang. We can talk about it. So I'll be here pa rin naman. Pa-check ng milestones. Okay. Sige. So kung walang questions or clarifications, we can end that for today. Pag-usapan na natin. Ay, yung mga gusto magpakita ng milestones or pa-check ng milestones, do stay behind. Right? Say that. We just follow our milestone schedule in capsule. Yeah. You don't have to follow the deadlines ng Dropbox. It's it's really what do you call this? You don't have to strictly follow it. Right? Sige. Again. So, yeah, kung walang questions or clarifications, you guys can go and stay safe and see you all next week. And most probably maybe face to face next week. Alright. Sige. Alright. Yung mga gusto mag-stay, stay lang. Sino muna? Ang Cruz? Ay, joke lang, wait.